This year's first-year lecturer, Thomas Metzinger, is a leading philosopher of mind working on consciousness and subjectivity, whose central thesis is that there is no subject. I will let him tell you more about his ideas. I was thinking over his accomplishments and thinking what might be good for me to tell you now by way of introduction, and I thought that I would tell you something that you might not know, which is that Thomas Metzinger is a community activist in a distinctively philosophical sort of way. Philosophy, unlike science, is not a team sport, but it is a collective undertaking nonetheless. Philosophers need teachers, they need interlocutors, they need readers, they need an audience, they need a community. Thomas Metzinger has done much work establishing philosophical community where there was none before. And I want to just give two examples. I can think of many, and I had to pick and choose among the examples to give you just two. If you've done work in philosophy at the frontier of philosophy and neuroscience, then you will know that that frontier can sometimes be a fairly cold and inhospitable place. Well, that certainly was true. It is much less true today, and I think in good measures as a result of the works of Thomas Metzinger. And in particular, I'm thinking of his work establishing such the International Society, the Association for the Scientific Study of Consciousness, which seeks to further international collaboration between philosophers and scientists. A little bit closer to home, closer to Thomas Metzinger's home, Thomas has, under the auspices of his office as professor of philosophy, has brought together young philosophers and neuroscientists working in the different corners of Germany in relative isolation on topics at the intersection of philosophy and neuroscience. He's brought them together, provided opportunities for interaction, discussion, collaboration, and thus established community. I think you can safely say that today, there's a real critical mass of work going on in philosophical neuroscience, especially among young scholars in Germany, and there wasn't before, and that is thanks to Thomas Metzinger. Now, Immanuel Kant, in the Critique of Pure Reason, wrote that if you measure the length of a book, not by how many pages it has, but by how difficult it is to read, by how much time it takes to read, then many a book wouldn't have been so long if it hadn't been so short. I'm sure we can all think of examples. Thomas Metzinger's recent book, Being No One, published by the MIT Press, is not an example of this. It is not a short book, weighing in at something like 700 pages. It is a very long book. However, it is a book of which one can say, I think, that this is a book that wouldn't have been so short if it hadn't been so long. It wouldn't have been so accessible, so available to writers working and thinkers coming from different traditions. It wouldn't have been so influential. It wouldn't have been so excellent if it didn't exhibit the kind of muscular scope which is in evidence in its length. So on that note, and without further delay, I introduce to you Professor Thomas Metzinger.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much, Alva, for your beautiful introductions. You must have all noticed how full of exaggerations Alva's introduction was. I'm very grateful for this invitation, let me say this, and I feel deeply honored for you to permit me to speak to you today. And it's always a pleasure to come back to Berkeley. When I got this invitation, I thought, Thomas, when actually were you the first time in Berkeley? And it appears it was more than a quarter century ago. It must have been September 1977. I had just finished high school, grabbed my backpack and flown into Montreal, Canada. And I hitchhiked down to New York, came back up, hitchhiked all the way through the Trans-Canada Highway and came down here from Vancouver. And somebody dropped me, pitch black, dark night, 10 o'clock at night on the freeway. And the next thing that happened is a car went over my backpack and tore everything apart. And as I was there on the freeway at 10 o'clock at night, gathering my belongings, my toothpaste here, my sleeping bag there, my camera there, the next car that came was a policeman. So I ran to the man and said, hey, listen, somebody just destroyed everything I have, and it's actually easy. It's the next car down the highway. Can you help me find these people? And he said, no, you get a $100 ticket for pedestrian on freeway. And to be quite honest with you, I spent almost all of last Sunday trying to find this notice to appear in court for you, but I actually didn't find it. And the next day, for the first time, I worked the Berkeley campus. And I saw this policeman walking the campus in a really relaxed way, swinging his, how do you say, riot stick or something like that, in a really relaxed way. And he had this nice clean uniform and a beautiful cap and hair down to the belt of his trousers. And I thought, that is really convincing. That would not have been possible in Germany in 1977. And I first realized there's something about Berkeley that I like. And so I'm very happy to be back here. How many of you do know the story of Mary, which was actually invented by an Australian colleague of mine, Frank Jackson, in 1982? It's the second half of a thought experiment that actually goes like this. Mary is the best neuroscientist mankind has ever had. She knows everything you can know about the physical, neurocomputational, what have you, underpinnings of conscious color vision. The first premise of the thought experiment is as strong as you may want to have it. Neuroscience has come to its historical ends. Mary knows all the physical facts underlying conscious color experience. The second premise of the thought experiment is she's never had a color experience herself. Through some allergy or something, she had to live in an achromatic prison under the earth. Everything was black and white, and she did all her studies through the internet with a black and white monitor. In short, she has never had a conscious color experience herself. She doesn't have any first-person knowledge. Now the question is, what happens if Mary leaves her achromatic dungeon and for the first time sees the blueness of the sky and a red apple on a tree? Does she learn anything new about reality? For most people, it seems obvious that the answer is yes. She learns new facts she didn't know before. For instance, facts about the minds of other human beings. She knows suddenly what her subjects she conducted experiments with via her black and white monitor have been talking about all the time when they talked about their red experiences, blue experiences, and so forth. But if this is true, says Frank Jackson, there is a hole in the scientific worldview which cannot be repaired, because there are phenomenal facts, non-physical facts. Here is how the argument goes. Before leaving her achromatic prison, Mary knows everything that can be known physically or neuroscientifically about the conscious color vision of human beings. When first viewing a colored object, she acquires new knowledge, and this knowledge is factual knowledge.